Okay, welcome back. So we've got one of the coolest iPhone applications ever that's currently under development that has a cyan-colored launch screen, and then it gives control over to this beautiful lime green, somewhat irritating shade of lime green interface here. So we made those changes by modifying our storyboard files. And I'm actually going to change that color of green because it is kind of annoying, and I'm going to change it to the salmon color because salmon, Anyway, so we've made a change to each storyboard file, and we've seen that change reflected in the interface of our application. Want to do one more thing in the contents of our view controller file here. Don't worry if this looks like totally unfamiliar. I'm going to talk about it at a high level here. And let's undo that. And we're going to go over it in much more detail in the courses themselves. So let's see, where are we sort of at a high level here? Part of the boilerplate code, this is part of the boilerplate code that was provided to us when we chose the single view application template. A single view application is exactly what it sounds like. It's an application with one view. So you probably used applications out there like Instagram or Facebook or the email app on the phone. There are many different views. You can view a list of your emails. You can view an individual emails. You can view attachments. You can send and compose new emails. All of those are different views, right? Those applications have many, many views that you interact with. Our application right now is exactly what this template provides for us, which is one single view. And that view happens to be this lime green, soon to be salmon color. This template provides us with this storyboard file and this viewcontroller.swift file. And in this viewcontroller.swift file, we can write code to manipulate the contents of our main.storyboard file. I'm going to stop and run just to illustrate that we went from this lime green to a salmon color, which we did. So that basically the application compiled and it ran, and we were able to confirm that the change we made had an effect. Now I'm going to click on viewcontroller.swift, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to delete this function called didReceiveMemoryWarning. It's not something we're going to use at this moment in time. And I'm going to give myself a little room inside of this viewDidLoad function. And let's talk a little bit about what this class is. A UI view controller is the name of a class that is sort of a fundamental building block of a user interface or the user interface for any application that you're building. So a UI view controller is a class that does one particular thing, and that is it controls a view. How does it do this? So we talked about a view being a group of pixels on screen that you can visually customize. A view controller holds on to that group of pixels or the view and gives you information about the life cycle of that view. And you can read a lot more about this. We're going to talk about this at a high level because we're not actually diving too deep right now. But if you hold down the Option key and you click on UI View Controller, you'll see a long description of the role of the UI View Controller class. And again, the UI View Controller class is a class that's part of the Apple APIs or the Apple library of code that Apple makes available to you as part of the iOS SDK. So I encourage you to read through this entire document if you have a little bit of free time. You can also click the link at the bottom to go to the UI View Controller class reference, which is much more in-depth documentation about the behavior of this class. What does it offer for you? And basically a detailed synopsis of its API. So what are the functions and properties that it has? You can find this in the documentation that comes bundled with Xcode. You could, of course, also just Google UI View Controller. And usually the first result will be the Apple documentation for that particular class. And you can see the same documentation in the context of the web here. So it's safe to say right now that a view controller controls a view, and it gives us certain information about the life cycle of that view, which is important. When did the view load? When is it about to appear? When is it about to disappear? When has it disappeared? When has it been destroyed? we're going to use this one single function that was provided in our boilerplate here called viewDidLoad. And you can see from the comment that Apple puts in there, inside of this function you should do any additional setup after loading the view, typically from a nib. A lot of new terms here, but this is basically a moment for us to customize or otherwise modify the view defined in our main.storyboard before it's presented to the user, before it comes on screen. So in main.storyboard, we clicked on our view and we modified the background color here. At some point shortly after that, this function is going to be called, because you can note the past tense, right? The view did load. It has already loaded. So, and the view is loaded from this interface builder file before it's put on screen here. This is our opportunity to make any adjustments to that view, which is colored salmon, after it's been loaded from the interface builder file from the storyboard and before it's actually rendered on screen. So we want to make one change here by typing the following line of code. We're going to say self.view.background color equals UI color, and let's say, why don't we say purple color? Who doesn't like purple? Cool. So we're going to write one line of code here. And when we stop and run again, we're going to see that this line of code overrides what we included in main.storyboard to say, hey, make the background of this view this salmon color. And it will actually change the background to purple. So let's hit run and confirm that that actually has happened. There we go. So we saw our launch screen, which is cyan, and then we saw the interface of our application, which is now purple. So why did that happen? Just a quick recap. We can configure the view in many, many different ways in the context of the storyboard here. But we can also make modifications to that view in the context of our Swift files, right? So in this case, viewController.swift. In the viewDidLoad method, we can make modifications to the view after it's been loaded from the nib and before it's presented to the user. And the order of operations is important. The first change that we made here, I mean, this is when the view is loaded from the interface builder file, it already has the salmon background color. And at this moment in time, we're working with a view that already has a salmon background color, and we're basically changing the color at this time before it shows up on screen. And we did that by saying self.view.background color. And this is us saying the view for the viewController class, and we do that by saying self.view, right? So like the view of this class, the view that this UI viewController instance controls, we want to change its background color to purple. And again, you can option click on UI color and read about that. You can option click on pretty much anything in here, especially elements that are part of the Apple APIs, and get information about what specifically it is, what its role is in the context of the Apple APIs and this application, really. So there you have it, basically. I wanted to illustrate one, what are storyboard files, how do we interact with them, and we looked at that at a pretty high level. You can see that there are tons and tons of different attributes in here, which we'll get to know more in depth a little bit later on. We made a simple change, which was to change the background color. We did that in 2 storyboard files. But we also then went and made a subsequent change in the viewController.swift file. And we kind of noted that the code that we read in the Swift file can have a direct impact on and modify the things that we set up in our interface builder file. And we saw that by changing that to purple color. And again, confirming, anytime we make a change, we want to confirm by running, did that change actually take effect? Because there are certainly things that you can mess up where you type this line of code to say, change this to purple. You run the application, it doesn't show up as purple, and you need to do a little debugging. So with that, that's pretty much it. We created a new project. We did a brief overview of some of the files included in that project. We made some modifications to the storyboard file. We learned how to view the contents of our application and see our modifications reflected via using the iOS simulator. And last but not least, we wrote one line of code and made a quick change to change the look and feel of the application that we're building. So from here, you can pretty much go in any direction. You can move from a blank canvas or a purple canvas to the most sophisticated interface that you can dream up. So we'll leave it at there. That's just a brief introduction to Xcode and a number of the things that it offers for you, as well as the anatomy of an iOS application project. Cool. Happy coding.